Hi, everybody. Welcome to Lake County Real Estate with Alyssa Pimentel. Today, we have one of my good friends on this episode.
Yeah, good friend. I love
Good
that.
friends. Yeah, I would say one of my best friends on this episode. Yeah.
We have become friends.
Yes, absolutely. We have become friends, but he also plays a really important role in this job that I do in real estate. He is my preferred lender. And we'll get into all of that and what that means. But it's Logan Brean with Cross Country Mortgage. I'm going to do a little hand clap for him. There's a couple disclosures that I have to throw out on this specific podcast. It does relate to Lake County. So yes, even though I'm a licensed real estate agent, you have to keep in mind every real estate agent has a different license per each state. So what I say might not apply to a different state. If you're really curious about your specific state and how things work there, I can always connect you with a real estate agent in that area. But keep in mind, you guys, that this is specifically for Lake County, which I know in the back of my hand. I get people all the time, Alyssa, can you please mentor me? And I started my own team and I took care of those 6 or 7. And I was like, that's all I can pour into because right now you have to work harder than ever. It's not as easy. The business does not get handed to you as well. So I always say, like, anybody could have been great in 2019 and 2020.
Right.
But how is 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and then on, when it gets harder, gonna make it? As you know, only 8% of real estate agents actually make it in this industry. But people are still on the tail end of 2020 thinking it's easy walking in.
Well, you had so many come in because they're seeing
it on the news.
Well, and they're seeing all their friends posting another closing.
Right. So they're like, wow, this person's making bank, not knowing that the industry is allowing it to be a little bit easier. Yes, you still had to do your job, right? But now it's like the leads are flowing to you, and lead generation is the hardest thing for anybody who's 100% self-employed, right?
It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it is scary.
Yeah.
But we made it.
But we made it, and we're cool, and now we're sitting real pretty.
Yeah.
Right? And now and we're still passionate about it.
But you still gotta
work.
Hey,
we're still working, but we got lucky to be.
Yeah. And I mean, look, this sometimes I don't know, I say this to Annie all the time, but I don't know, it didn't go over well. But sometimes I feel like on my end could in some ways be a little bit more stressful for the reason that
yes,
I am having to answer to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having to answer to the client. Mm-hmm. I'm having to answer to the attorney. I'm having to answer to the listing agent.
And the other 10 deals you're working on.
And
with
guess
that
what?
Whole sphere.
Guess what? If something goes wrong, even if it is not my fault, it's still my fault. And I've tried not to let that stress me as much, but
it all comes down to financing.
That's why I am very thorough with everything from the beginning.
So let's talk about that, though.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, so now that you guys kind of know Logan, which how can you not love him, right?
There's probably other things that
there's so many things.
Yeah.
But I think let's talk about what it takes. Like yes, your job, but when people are like listening to this and they're like, okay, cool. Now I like Logan. I want to apply with him. Yesterday I talked about the most common like myths, and it all came down to financing. And I think that people are just so uneducated in it. Yes, you get the application and you do all of that, but what would you say is the hardest thing as a lender when it comes to people wanting to buy or sell, like the misconceptions with that? What would you tell a first-time home buyer, like as a person in your position who does the file, who does carry that weight with that stress? What would you say if people knew it would make your life easier?
Like to the client themselves,
yeah.
I would say be as thorough as possible with what you are giving me.
As a lender.
You don't want to leave anything out, right? And what I always, I do things a little bit different. Like I might take a little longer, but the reason why I take longer is because And there are some clients, they will send everything that I need right away.
It's beautiful.
And I'm like, this is great. But
so what is it that people need?
So, I mean, obviously they need W-2s and pay stubs and bank statements and stuff like that. And some of it sounds silly, and they're not, they'd be like, well, I have $7,000, $10,000 in my bank account. Here's my bank name. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, I have everything else. Like I might let it slide, but even that could get me in trouble later because There's even things within the bank statement. It doesn't matter if you have enough money for closing, but it's my job to get that bank statement, because if I get it back and I see, well, wait a minute, you got a $10,000 deposit 2 weeks ago. Where did that money come from?
Yeah.
Oh, well, and again, a lot of first-time homebuyers don't know this. Oh, well, it was cash that I had that I saved up.
Mattress money.
Well, guess what? You can't use that.
Right.
And once it's in there, you can't use it. So when that goes through underwriting and it gets to our underwriter, she's going to say, hey, like, we need to source this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they come back and say cash, well, now that $10,000, we have to back it out like it's not there. If they cannot prove where it came from, and proving it is not like, oh yeah, let me, my this person will write a letter saying they gave it to they
go deeper than that.
No, like, there's got to be a paper trail for it. It's very serious about that. Now, if you let me know that ahead of time, we can work out something like, hey, maybe you can get a gift, whatever. But that's why it's important to get those things, because the alternative is I say, hey, Alyssa, this person's good to go, and I didn't get their bank statements, and you go out, show them house. They go under contract, and now I get those bank statements and I see all that. Or the other thing with even bank statements is there could be an undisclosed, we call it an undisclosed debt. Meaning on your credit report, it's going to tell me every monthly obligation you have to pay. And that factors into your debt to income ratio, which is a big deal. But there are some things that don't. What if they owe the IRS and they're on an IRS plan? That doesn't show up on your credit report, but guess what?
Shows up on that
Once
bank
we
statement.
see that on every bank
withdrawal.
statement coming through, we have to then add that in, and that could be a deal breaker.
Right.
So it's very important for me, that's my way of doing things, to get everything. If that means that it's going to take me another day to get your pre-approval
so
set,
you can go shopping.
I would rather take that extra day than rush it, tell you they're good, then you're wasting your time, because ultimately there's something that we find that they're not approved.
And I think that's like, I want to touch on that. And I know we've said this a million times, and you always hear me say like the same thing because it's just so common. I think that's why I say having a good lender is important, because people know that they could go on rocketmortgage.com, which was bought by previously Quicken Loans. They can go anywhere and say, I want to buy a house. And there's going to be some kind of ad that pops up and says, apply here, our rate's 6.7. And you're like, oh my God, I heard the rates were 8. So it draws you in. It's clickbait.
Yeah.
You apply, but you're not really applying, right? They're just putting in, they could say, I think my credit score is at 670. Nobody's really checking that. I think I make X amount of money. Like my
it's a drop list, and it says, do you make about this much, this much, this much? Some of these places will just spit you out a pre-approval based on, if I can make $10 million a month, and they'll be like, okay. Well,
and then they'll say, here's your pre-approval, go shopping, and now you give it to your agent, who shouldn't be showing you houses without something like that. And then what ends up happening as an agent, well, my client thinks they're pre-approved, but nobody really did their due diligence at this crappy loan place to really check everything. Now I got them under contract, meaning we got an offer accepted on a house, we're moving forward, and then I get it over to everybody, the attorneys, the lender who gave us the quote-unquote pre-approval, and it goes into underwriting. And when it goes into underwriting, guess what they got to do? They got to pull all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Now we found the discrepancies. Guess what? You're not even pre-approved. What happens to me as a realtor? Now I got to explain to my client that you can't buy this house because you didn't have anybody who did their due diligence to look at this ahead of time. And they don't know that.
And it's not the buyer's fault.
That's 1,000%. I think the reason for this podcast too is to like really let people know, because I'm big on talking about stuff like that, because they don't know. People just don't know.
And another thing I want to mention is like, one of the big reasons of why I do all that and why I feel like I'm in a very good position is because we have our own underwriter.
In-house, you don't have to wait. It's like right next to you.
Well, no, she's not next to us. She doesn't work in our office, but again, it's like another situation where it's like she has become like a friend. So just before I came here, I have something going on with a deal. I just call her.
Yeah.
Hey, like, this is what I'm being told. Like, how do we go about this? A lot of lenders don't have it. not even. So this is something, again, Sly told me when I started, he said, you don't know how good you have it because, he's been doing this for 20 years. He said to be able to call an underwriter, like, are you crazy?
And get your answer right then and there instead of waiting for a week for, you know what I mean,
Not
while
possible.
they're under contract. Yeah.
That has been, she is one of the main reasons of why when somebody comes, oh my gosh, you guys did that closing in 10 days.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because if I go to her and say, look, either one, I'm trying to impress the agent or whatever it is, or they just need to close in 10 days, I'm saving a deal. Can you please put this in the front of the line? Yes. You think most places they're going to be like, no.
And that's where like the save a deal comes from. You're like a
lot of people know
Dr. Loan here because a lot of people do that, then realize there's an issue. The lender can't do it now. Well, then now they're going to listen to the realtor who's going to say, okay, I know Rocket Mortgage can do it, but you're going to call Logan now.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if he can save this.
Yeah.
He's a loan doctor at this point. You know what I'm saying? And then you look at everything, and we've had it many of times where you look at it and you'll be like, all right, Alyssa or whoever, like they're actually good. They can continue.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know why Rocket Mortgage couldn't do it, whatever, but I really checked it and it can happen. Or
on the other end of it, there's a lot of times where
you're like, how in these people can't even, do anything.
And, there's times like that where I'm like,
it's heartbreaking.
It's not, yes, it is. But there's also like, am I second, like, is this legit? And, sometimes it's clear, cut and dry. Like
this can't
there's
happen
no way
until they,
and sometimes I'm like, is there something I'm missing, But most of the time it's not.
Yeah.
It's just that some loan officers, whether they're new, they don't have the support behind them. They're just they don't look at everything. And in my line of work, there are so many little fine details that if you miss one, it could just ruin the whole deal.
Yeah, I know. I've learned. And it's so heartbreaking as the agent to be like, I know we found the house. I know that you love it. I know that you already put your earnest money and did a home inspection, but your lender's saying we can't make it happen. And I called Logan and I asked him to look at it. And even he's saying, yeah, I don't know how so-and-so even shot out a pre-approval to them.
Like, right, you should have known that from the
And
very
it's
beginning.
sad because now they're like, what? They're and they try to find anyway. And it's like, if you would have just started with the pre-approval, which like a proper one, the problem is everyone thinks they're the same. If you would have known where to go or maybe talk to an agent, I don't know. It's hard for people. They don't know. You know what I mean?
Don't.
Like you only know what you know.
They don't.
And sometimes that's just a part of someone's journey is to go through that and then, be able to tell their friends and family, yo, don't make the same mistake I did.
Yeah. Sometimes they have to go through that. Exactly. I agree.
So about that 10K, like, let's talk about that somebody dropped in their bank account, right?
Oh, right.
And keep in mind disclosure, right? Like everybody's situation is different. You're going to hear this podcast and you're going to be like, okay, he mentioned 10,000. He said not to, drop it in there and then try to buy a house because I'm not going to be able to use that. It's not only just this little scenario or this little story. And there's so much more that can go wrong that might be different from what your friends did. And this is something I'm always telling home buyers, like until you talk to one of us for real, don't listen to anybody. And even when you're listening to this podcast, remember every situation is different. I don't know how much more I can explain that, but there are some actual facts with lending that like you just can't get by it.
Right.
So somebody dropping 10K into there and wanting to use it, what would you how would you remedy that as as a lender?
I mean, if I talk to them beforehand, which I do like to do that, if somebody says, when I'm on the phone with somebody and I'm talking to them, because some people will talk to me first, and I like that because then I can ask them, more detailed questions, but sometimes they'll just apply. And obviously after I look at everything, I will talk to them on the phone and, I'll say, hey, the money that you put in here, you have available, you have those in bank accounts. Sometimes they can link their accounts and then I could clearly see it's in there. But if I ever get any kind of like implication that it's money that they have aside, and some will mention that, well, right now I've got about, $5,000 in my Chase, but I got $10,000, and I'm like, where is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's cash. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Do not put that money
Don't
in your
put
account.
And they'll tell me right away, hey, Alyssa, I just got all this money. I'm going to go drop it in my account. And I'm like, no, no, don't do that. Because you can't use it.
Unless you are not planning to buy for a
3
few months
yeah.
because that money has to be seasoned. Once it's seasoned in your account for a couple months, then typically you can use it. But
if you
the
just drop
problem
it in
is if they're already under contract and that is within the, because we have to get the last 60 days worth of bank statements. And if that's in there, once it's in there, there's really no way to get around that.
Yeah.
Like if they can't verify where it came from, if it's not like, oh, I got a bonus from work, but if it's a bonus from work, usually on the transaction, it'll say, you know, so-and-so paid
bonus
from their employer.
from their company. And then it's not questionable because it's from their company.
Usually a cash deposit will just say deposit.
Right.
No other
That's
explanation.
when it's like, hold on.
And so either I'm hoping they're like, oh, my grandma wanted to give me money, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Then we have to say, okay, well, your grandma we have to treat this as a gift. Your grandma's going to have to fill out we fill out the gift letter, they sign it, do a couple things. But
don't they also, if it's, want to see like the grandma's bank statement to see that it came out of there and went to there?
So
or came out at all?
For FHA, which is the government loan, like they have a little bit more. There's some things that are less strict, but some things that are more. FHA requires a bank statement no matter what from the gift donor. So whoever's giving the gift. The reason for that is they want to see that they had that money available. Mm-hmm. So I've had one time before where the person, you know, who I was working with said, I'm going to get a gift from my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. So, okay, we need his most recent bank statement showing that he had that money. And I get the bank statement, and literally the day before that he gave her the gift, there was a $10,000 deposit into his account.
So, sir, where you getting this? Because now we got to go to where that came from.
Right.
Y'all don't play.
I mean, there's a certain, that we have to look at because we want to see that they had the money already. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, then it's like you kind of have to assume that, okay, maybe they did have that $10,000, mm-hmm. just gave it to him.
Right.
And now he's getting, like, no, right. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's something like we got to just mention because a lot of people who might be listening to their parents who bought a house back in the day prior to 2009, like the way that they used to do loans back then. And I know because, you know, I'm a second generation realtor. I lived mm-hmm. through that whole thing. We can talk about that all day. But the way that they used to do loans for perhaps your parents or really anybody who bought prior to 2009 was way different than what how they do it now. So you might get somebody who's saying, man, that's a lot of work for the bank to be questioning and all that. Or you might think that the government is after you because we're asking you all these questions. No, it's just that since the market crash, we've had to do loans differently because the market crashed primarily because of what? The way loans were done. They didn't really ask for anything back then.
Right.
You could
just go in and say, I made
$1 million are going to approve you and you're going to buy something you can't afford.
They only used to ask for the first page of the bank statement.
Yeah.
Now, which is this big thing. It's like a joke. You know, it's like, hey, I need your bank statements. And they'll send one, you know, it'll say on the top, page 1 of 5. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to just download a statement on any bank that you bank with and you get the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But I understand some people might not be great with technology, this, that. So they'll have a printout and I'll say, hey, you know, unfortunately, we need every page. So it's like page 1 of 2.
Page 2 of 2, page 3 of 3.
4 of 4.
Up until
and then it's like, where's 5 of 5?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that page was blank. What they don't understand is we still need that. So that's one thing, you know, that I run, which is not a big deal.
But it wasn't like that before.
No.
And that's where people are like, oh, I'm waiting for the market to crash. And I'm like, you don't understand. We're trying to avoid that by the way that we changed doing loans now. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to have the same effect as 2009.
No.
Because the reasoning of it has changed. We've tried to change the reasoning of, you know, giving houses to people who can't afford them like they were doing back then.
Honestly, right now, there's not a lot of foreclosures.
There's like no foreclosures because people have too much equity in their house.
Exactly. So if they're going to go into foreclosure, they have options. They have options to
sell regularly, not at a discounted rate because it never hit the bank.
Exactly.
There's just so much people don't know. It's so sad.
The market's not going to crash.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I bring that up is because when somebody says, you know, let's say I bought prior to 2009, I'm like, I didn't have to do that much work. Why is your lender asking for all this stuff? Because they have to. because now they're like the system won't let you get past it to give that loan.
Right.
Like the government, especially on FHA, because it's a government loan, wants to make sure that like we're giving to a borrower who's gonna pay this back because we don't want to default. We don't want to have another crash.
It's not like I'm asking for these things. I don't require these
That's
things.
what I'm trying to say. It's not
And
your
it's
lender.
and it's not even really the company itself that I work for. So that's the thing. Some companies, we have to go based off of the guidelines of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, FHA, VA, right? They have their guidelines. We have to follow those guidelines. Now, some mortgage companies have their what they call overlays, meaning, yes, this is what Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, FHA asks for, but we have our own requirements.
on top of
On
the
top,
other
right?
requirements.
Cross country does not have any overlays for the most part on normal, conventional, FHA type of loans. We go with what they need. That's what we need.
Yeah.
So some companies are like, yeah, that's what they're asking for, but we want this as well.
Right.
So when we moved here to cross country, when Sly said, hey, there's no overlays here, I was like, oh, that's good.
Right.
That
it
helps.
gives you more room to be able to figure something out, but still having to follow the minimum guidelines.
Of course.
That people sometimes complain about, and it's sad. I'm like, I think that's one thing that maybe a buyer might get frustrated with during their home buying process is like, why is my lender asking for this again? And they'll call me, they'll be like, Alyssa, I already gave that. I already gave this. And I'm like, you don't understand. It's not that the lender themselves wants this. It's that like they have to have it. The system won't allow them to continue your loan process. Like I know that might be something that people get frustrated with. And I think that's just in general from any good lender that's doing their job because they have to ask for it. But what I'm trying to say is just give them what they need because it's not you. It's the government needs these things, and they're not out to like see if you're selling drugs or anything like that either. They don't even they don't care.
If some, yes, you get some buyers that might be, you could see they're getting irritated, and I say, look, I don't want to ask you for these things.
I'm tired
either.
of asking you.
I don't want to
give me this, please.
And that's another reason why from the beginning I like to ask for as much as possible, because once they go through the process, that means that's that many things less. Because the last thing that we want to do, and it's the worst feeling on my end, like, oh my gosh, now I have to go back and ask for this.
Yeah, it sucks.
Because sometimes things come up on our end or on their end, and it's like, oh my gosh, and it's always with the people that are like, I already sent you this, and I'm like, oh my god, now I have to go back to them and ask for this.
Yeah.
So like we want to avoid that at all costs because.
But sometimes you can't help it.
The main goal in this whole thing is to make it the most smoothest, pleasant experience.
But there are things that will come up. It's still buying a house. And I think that's so important to tell people. Like, it's never going to be like what you see on HGTV. I mean, let's be honest, right?
No.
Like, it's your realtor and your lender is supposed to make it the easiest for you. But there's still life and things still happen. It's still a process. It's still a loan. It's still probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your life. So there are going to be some things. But when you have a good team that's there to encourage you and be like, I really don't want to ask for this again, but I have to,
And that I don't know, I might go off a little topic here, but that kind of brings up another point that, we try to build a team, right? And yes, you have your team, and I might be what I would like to think a part of any agent that I work with very seriously. When they say, hey, when they have their own preferred people, right? This is who I trust here. This is who you kind of become a part of their team,
right?
And that's what makes the experience the best.
Yeah.
Because like I know you see some agents, and I'm not talking bad, but they might use a different lender every single time. How can you build that rapport with all those people
so that everyone can make it the easiest and smoothest and nicest?
And if I do your sister's loan, right, and now I'm doing your cousin's loan, and they had two different people, they're like,
right,
it's
a business,
and
it's a business,
right?
It's your baby.
But you look at the top. You think they use 5? Do they? Okay, here's my 5 home inspectors and my 5 different.
You want to narrow it down,
because that's what makes everything as
And
smooth
that's
as
when
possible.
the client feels like, wow, I loved my team.
And I'm not trying to say that to say, hey, I want more business. But what I do believe I can do is add that value.
Right.
You
right.
know, and I think some agents look past that, but the ones that are experienced and do very well, they understand it. Like, now this person's a part of our team because we trust them so much, right?
Right.
And you're going to get way more answers and information out of me than you would from somebody that you might not know, right?
So like the bank.
Right. Again,
and there's so much. I feel like, to your point, yes, you want to have your lender be part of your team, just like I have my preferred attorney. And I think that, I talked to I want to say producers here. I don't know how to call them. This channel is also for mentoring realtors or people in the industry because, people follow me and they're like, Alyssa, I want to learn how to do this, or how are you doing such business? How do you run a successful team? You're only this age. Like, how? They can't believe it. Right.
Yeah.
And I will you get it too, because we're both young and we started late and we're up there. Thank God. Right. And so I get people all the time who are asking, and I'm like, okay, this channel, I'm going to also teach you how to be a really great real estate agent. Part of being a really great real estate agent is having your preferred people. My team is not just my agents. My team, like you said, is also you. It's also Myra. It's also my preferred home inspector, right?
Right.
And when you're building your business and when you're learning how to be in this industry, if you want to be successful, you hone in on the people that work for you. You're getting thrown out, like I said in the beginning, like every lender is hitting me up. You're getting thrown out so many people. And you're like, I'm going to meet with this person because they're going to buy me lunch. And I'm going to meet with this person because they're going to buy me coffee. Not realizing that, yes, do that until you find your match. But once you find that match and you stick with it, if it works, right, you will grow, because now what do I call us? The dream, I call us the dream team. It's I forget who I put you. Dennis Rodman, Myra's Michael Jordan, because it's legalities. I don't know. Either way,
I would say you're probably Michael Jordan because you're running the show.
No, I like Dennis Rodman. Okay. I like Dennis Rodman.
I'll be whatever.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. But that's part of growing in this industry, especially in real estate, because as an agent, you're not the only piece. You're the hub that keeps everything together while everybody else is working with you and for your client, just to get your client to where they want to be. Right. It's your lender, it's your attorney, it's your home inspector. That all has to fit in together. And until you can zone in on who your trusted people are, you ask the top agents, they've got their own. You know what I'm saying? Right. So somebody's not really going to grow in this industry if you're using everybody from everywhere, because you have no consistency, even outside of yourself. Right. But anyways, I think we're gonna have to cut it short because we're almost done. Recording time's almost done. But
that went fast.
That went really fast. If you guys ever have any questions about home loans or anything like that, we would talk all day about the misconceptions with home buyers. The 10K was just a little taste of the things that people might have questions about. That's what we deal with every single day. But anyway, this is Logan. He's the best. Thank you, Logan, for being at the show. He does loans, and if you guys need to contact him, his email is loganb@ccm.com. Yep. And if you wanted to apply with him or ask him any questions, you can go to his website as well. Probably email him. But you can go to your website too, right?
Yeah,
Logan Brean.
loganbrean.com. Yeah, that's where you could essentially apply to start to get the pre-approval process done.
Right.
Or call me, meet with me, whatever.
Yeah.
I want whatever's most comfortable for anyone.
Yes. And remember, the pre-approval comes first. This is your first step. Getting pre-approved is your very first step. And if you're not ready, which most home buyers aren't, so don't be discouraged if you're not ready to buy. If you're not ready, he can help you get there. He brought my mama's credit score up. This man, we applied with him. He knew exactly what to do.
One thing, you don't want to be scared.
Yeah, don't be scared.
You're scared because you're guessing.
Right.
So have somebody, a professional, tell you where you are. Mm-hmm. And if you need to get somewhere, my job is, and what I want to do is help you get there.
Perfect.
The right way.
So hit him up. You got his email now, and you got his website. And you can always just hit me up too, and I'll connect you with him. So thanks for watching Lake County Real Estate with Alyssa Pimentel and our special guest, Logan Brean. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
If you're ready to explore the Lake County real estate scene, whether you're a local or considering making this your home, hit that subscribe button and join us on Lake County Real Estate, all things real estate with Alyssa Pimentel.